Today talking about generally CAD tools and we had a presentation to the people who were in the room, and we finally had the feeling that most of the people who were in the room never used a CAD tool, which was an important information for the people speaking here, because we kind of prepared for an environment in which everybody already knew everything and there was a lot of detail to be specified. And we found out that there is a lot of room for marketing, which is an interesting information in itself. We've been presenting some examples of what things are like and how can be used. Then we move to analyze what is the real technology that can be expected to be found in the other world, that is, in the place in which there is no broadband, there is no easy access to the internet, that is 80% of mankind, which is most of our potential consumers when we produce localization, because most of the languages are in that situation. Then we move to analyze what must be done in order to make a better coverage of languages, because as has been well shown by experience in South Africa, the problem is not really just willing to do something. The problem is that when you have a language that has a small number of available resources, building up resources is in itself a process, and it's a process that involves building human resources. So it's not just a decision that can be made like, okay, tomorrow we start to have everything Zulu, because okay, you can do that as a decision, but you cannot implement your decision, because you will not have people enough to do that, and you will not have the tools enough to do that. So there is a process in the process, and we have started to say this. Then we move to see what machine-aided translation can do, and that's been the first part of our path through productivity. That is, what can we do when there's not people enough? What can we use? And here we have the experience, in my opinion, the best experience I met so far in machine-aided translation, that is the Aperture project.
Which project?
The Aperture project. That's it. Done in Spain mostly, where they simply couple close enough languages in order to export similarities that are present and use them in order to make the job lighter. And we have seen what kind of use can be made from the material we obtain in this way. Then we have moved to speak again of the basic building blocks towards the environment project, and speaking of how we can build a repository that can be used to make corpus in a language, that can be used to maintain the material that is being produced by translators, so that it can be reused, it can be shared, it can be analyzed, it can be used by machine-aided translation or whatever else in order to produce a new layer of content. And we have also seen how the next phase is probably not written at all, but we are rapidly shifting in the information technology towards a spoken and visual communication again. And so we really need to start to think about repository and recognition that is not based on character, but it's based on things that you can hear or see, depending on what happens. So we go towards what in some way is machine-aided simultaneous translation, which is the future, but it's a future that is starting tomorrow, because Google has announced a week ago that they are moving to cell phones because they make much more money than computers. So if these big things move, everything else is going to move with them. So it's not far away science fiction we're talking about, but the productive reality of tomorrow morning. Then we have had a period of interesting questions and answers that have come from the public of the previous session. Since most of us have experience with dying languages or endangered languages or lesser source languages, we are all the possible degrees of from desperate to a bit worried. that's our our range of management. And we've been discussing what are the dynamics that can be used in order to make a new patient feel a bit better and make sure that a patient that might catch a cold will not get it. And mostly we have ended up saying that in the end it's up to the people who are the talkers. There is no foreign intervention that can do anything, but basically one thing decides all. As long as you can make a life speaking that language and you can earn a living and you can have a dignity using that language is going to live. When that language becomes a social marker and people are going to point you at the finger saying, ah, that one, so then it's death. And that's the way it goes. Then we have talked about dynamics in language preservation and what people are trying to do in order to change the situation whenever possible. And again, we have seen what small tools can do and how they can be prepared, stuff like material for children and etc., etc. And then we got finally to the very roots of everything, which are an example of how a translation is made, which is what you have seen using Kakal, and how the real process is. Because in the end, there is somebody who sees strings or whatever and has to type in raw material for somebody else to see. Because we make big discussion, but that's the meat in the end. And we have been discussing how this is legally possible. Because one thing is that you want to do it, the other thing is that you are permitted. I mean, you can always do it illegally in your home. But that's pretty much like making whiskey in the 30s. You don't want to get caught. If you put yourself into a legal framework that gives you the possibility of taking part into this wider circulation of goods, that is starting up and it's really starting to bring a big momentum, then you can be a part of the scheme. I wish to end the session by saying that the historical problem with translation is exactly here. That is, let's call things their names. I'm doing a job which consists in being given money because I've been putting money back on the chair. I spend a few hours and I produce a number of strings and now I can give you and you can have them if you pay for them. That's the root of the matter. When we talk about this, we are saying, okay, you can get it going. So that's the difficult part to sell to translators. Because we can call it anyway, but they are not stupid, and in the end, they will perfectly understand that what we are saying is there is no money in this scheme. Now we have to bring the money back and say exactly how they're going to profit out of this scheme. And it's true, they are going to profit out of this scheme. The first thing is that the number of translation is not going to decrease, it's going to increase in the foreseeable future. It's going to increase for a number of reasons. The first one is that the dominance of the Western sector is over. The big China is now the tiger who is producing stuff, but you don't meet many Chinese who are capable to write a user book in German or in French. So that means that you still have to produce this material, and at the moment you're still producing it because the project centers are in Germany, are in France. Are they going to stay there for long? That's not economically viable. Sooner or later, the very project center will go to China, and at that point, your user manual will be written in ideograms. And you will have to deliver it to an EU consumer somehow. So when you put your stuff here in this moneyless scheme, what you're doing is building a corporate identity for translators, that it's a common shared base for high quality that you can share and reuse. And obviously, you're not going to put the quality stuff that you can sell. You're putting the scrap here. But we're pretty much satisfied with the scrap. We don't need the big picture. The big picture can still be solved. But if you make sure that all the screws, small parts, and everything that is boring and is repeated over and over and over again, or the very difficult word that can be found